I never imagined that a single evening could alter the course of my life. At 42, I had settled into a predictable routine, going to work, returning home, and repeating the cycle day after day. Change wasn't something I sought, nor was love. But one late night, when my son's best friend, a young man I only knew vaguely from conversations, appeared at the diner where I worked, everything began to shift. I assumed he was just there to give me a ride home, but I was mistaken. What unfolded next was beyond anything I could have anticipated. My name is Eleanor Carter. I'm 42, and I reside in a modest apartment in Brooklyn, New York. If anyone asked how I was doing, I'd simply smile and say I was fine. But the truth is, I can't recall the last time I truly felt okay. 4 years ago, my husband, Daniel Carter, passed away in a car accident on his way home from a late meeting. In an instant, my world was turned upside down. Daniel wasn't just my husband, he was my partner, my rock, my everything. After that day, I no longer knew how to live fully. My son Liam Carter, who is now 23, is the only thing keeping me from falling apart. I used to believe that if I focused on him and worried about his life, I wouldn't have time to feel the pain of loss. But that wasn't the case. Liam grew up in a loving family, yet when his father died, I knew I couldn't fill the void in his heart, no matter how hard I tried. He put on a brave face and tried to live happily, but I could see how much he missed his father. As for me, I buried myself in work. I was the night manager at a small diner called the Bluebell Diner, located on the corner of 5th Avenue and 9th Street in Brooklyn. I'd arrive at 5 p.m. every day and leave at 11 p.m. After the last customers had gone, the chairs were stacked on the tables and the floors were mopped. I wore myself out so I wouldn't have to face the emptiness of my life. My co-workers at the diner were kind people. Maria, a 28-year-old waitress with a head of curly hair, would share stories of her awkward dates. John, the head chef, a man in his 50s with a grey beard, was gruff, but genuinely cared about me. Yet, no matter who I was with, I always felt out of place. When I returned to my small apartment in Park Slope, once filled with the laughter of my family, I was met with an unsettling silence. I'd open the door, drop my bag on the kitchen counter, pour myself a glass of wine, and stand by the window, gazing out at the quiet Brooklyn streets at night. It was the moment I dreaded most. The moment when work no longer distracted me and loneliness washed over me. I couldn't remember the last time I felt truly loved. These lonely days dragged on like a movie with no climax, no resolution. I had grown accustomed to it, or perhaps I was just convincing myself that I had. Then came a night that seemed no different from any other, but it changed everything. I had no idea my life was about to take a dramatic turn. It was an October evening, and the Brooklyn air had already turned chilly. I wrapped my thin coat tightly around me as I left the Bluebell Diner at 11 p.m. The breeze made me shiver, but I was used to the cold by then. I had no clue that someone was waiting for me. A black car was parked right in front of the diner. At first, I thought it was a lingering customer or someone waiting for a loved one. But when the window rolled down, I saw a face that was both unfamiliar and yet somehow known. A young man with a slightly uncertain but sincere expression. "Miss Eleanor," he said, his voice soft and gentle. I frowned, feeling a bit suspicious. "Yes, you're Noah Evans, Liam's friend," I said, blinking a few times, trying to place him. Liam had mentioned Noah before, a guy he often saw at the gym near our house, but I never expected to meet him like this. "Liam asked me to pick you up," he said. "Where is he?" I asked, suddenly feeling a twinge of worry. Noah chuckled, looking a little embarrassed. "He had some unexpected business and didn't want you walking home this late." I studied Noah for a long moment, trying to decide if I could trust him. He looked much younger than me, maybe 26 or 27, tall and solidly built, with a calmness that seemed beyond his years. Still, I hesitated. I was used to doing everything on my own, and didn't like relying on others, especially someone I'd never met in person. But as I looked down the long, empty road ahead, thinking about the 15-minute walk home alone, I sighed. Okay, thanks, Noah. I opened the car door, got in, and fastened my seatbelt. Noah drove carefully, not speeding or weaving through lanes like some young men I'd seen. He didn't say much, but there was something about his quiet demeanor that made me feel oddly at ease. How long have you been working at the Bluebell Diner? Noah asked, breaking the silence. I glanced at him. About 6 years. After my husband died, I needed a steady job to take care of Liam. Noah nodded, his expression unchanged, but I noticed a thoughtful look in his eyes. I'm sorry, he said. It's okay. It's been a while, I replied, trying to sound composed. A moment of silence passed before Noah spoke again. Liam really admires you. He always says you're stronger than anyone he's ever met. I couldn't help but smile, though it was tinged with bitterness. I don't feel strong, but when you lose someone, you have no choice but to keep going. Noah didn't respond immediately. He simply nodded as if he understood exactly what I meant. We drove in silence for a while longer, and it felt strangely comforting. I was accustomed to conversing with friends my own age, people with families, women who often discussed their marital struggles. But Noah was different. He was nearly 16 years younger than me, yet he carried a calmness I couldn't overlook. What was even more surprising was that I didn't feel uneasy sitting beside him. When the car stopped in front of my apartment in Park Slope, I unbuckled my seatbelt and glanced at Noah. Thank you, Noah. You really didn't have to do this. I can walk home alone. Noah gave a small smile, his eyes gentler than before. I know, but sometimes someone should care about you, he said. His words left me momentarily speechless. It had been so long since anyone had said something like that to me. I didn't respond, just nodded and opened the door to step out. But as I closed the car door and walked toward my house, I noticed my heart was beating a little faster. When I turned back and saw Noah still sitting there, his eyes following me as if to ensure I made it home safely, I realized something had shifted. I didn't know what it was, but I knew this night wasn't like any other. I had assumed my life would always revolve around the monotonous days at the Bluebell Diner and the lonely nights in my small apartment. Yet, for the first time in 4 years, I felt a strange sensation, as if a door in my heart had cracked open slightly. I wasn't sure if I should let it open wider. I tried not to dwell on meeting Noah that night, or at least I told myself not to. But no matter how hard I tried, his image kept returning to my thoughts. The way he drove quietly through the night, the calmness in his eyes, and his simple yet haunting words. Sometimes, someone should care about you. It seemed like an innocent remark, just a polite statement without deeper meaning. So why did it make my heart flutter? I wasn't used to this feeling. For the past 4 years, I had grown accustomed to living alone, not expecting anyone to care or worry about me. Men my age, if not married, were busy chasing their own lives. I never imagined anyone would genuinely care about me. But Noah was different. He wasn't like anyone I had ever known, and I realized that the very next night. After my shift at the Bluebell Diner, I went home as usual. But as I set my bag down on the table and poured myself a glass of wine, I felt something was missing. I wasn't expecting anything, yet I felt emptier than usual. My phone buzzed. Miss Eleanor, was the restaurant busy today? I stared at the screen for a few seconds. I didn't need to guess who it was. Noah. I wasn't sure why he was texting me, but the strange thing was, I wasn't annoyed. If anything, I was a little surprised. I put down my glass, hesitated, and then replied, same as usual. Tired, but not too bad. How about you? Less than a minute later, he responded, same as usual, but I was thinking about yesterday. I hope you don't mind me picking you up. I frowned. Was he really thinking about that? I swiped my finger across the screen and typed, no problem, Noah. I'm just surprised. Not many people do that for me. His reply came quickly. A lot of people should. I paused, unsure how to respond. I was used to people not caring, but Noah, after just one meeting, could say something like that with such certainty. Maybe he was just a kind person, maybe it was just politeness, but Deep down, I sensed there was more to it. From that day on, we began texting more frequently. At first, it was just small talk. How was the restaurant today? Is it raining in Brooklyn? Did Liam mention me? But gradually, the conversations grew deeper. One night, as I sat on the couch with my phone in hand, Noah texted, "Have you ever thought about starting over?" I frowned and replied, "What do you mean?" He responded, "I mean your life. Have you ever thought about doing something else, trying something new?" I hesitated, my fingers hovering over the screen. I hadn't considered that before. I was used to seeing my life as a single, unchanging routine. Wake up, go to work, come home, sleep. I didn't think I could change anything. I texted back, honestly, "I don't think I can start over, Noah." After a pause, he replied, "Why not?" I didn't know how to answer. I didn't know how to explain the exhaustion or the wounds I had buried for so many years. But there was something about the way Noah asked, about his patience, that made me want to open up. And I did. That night, I told Noah about Daniel, about how he died so suddenly, about the years I had to stay strong for Liam. And Noah listened, not just politely, but truly listened. I could tell by the way he responded, by the thoughtful questions he asked. It had been a long time since I'd had a conversation like that, and I realized I was starting to look forward to his messages every day. As time passed, I began to notice changes in myself. I no longer felt as tired when I left the restaurant, and I no longer felt as lonely when I came home at night because I knew there would be a text waiting for me. I didn't want to admit it, but I was starting to enjoy having Noah in my life, not in the way a middle-aged woman should feel about a much younger man. But there was something about him that made me feel safe. It was a sense of safety I hadn't felt since Daniel left. And that was what scared me the most, because I knew that if I let myself go too far, I wouldn't be able to turn back. And I wasn't sure I was ready for that. I don't know when I began eagerly anticipating Noah's messages every night. At first, they were just casual stories about work, life, and the small everyday things. But over time, those conversations became a regular part of my routine. Then, late one evening, as I finished my shift at the Bluebell Diner, my phone buzzed again. "Eleanor, are you free tomorrow?" I frowned at the screen. It was the first time he had asked me something like that. "What do you want me to do for you?" I replied. "Not much," Noah responded. "I just thought maybe you'd like to go out instead of heading straight home after work." I hesitated. It seemed like a simple request. Just coffee, two acquaintances sitting down to talk. But something inside me made me pause. How long had it been since I'd gone out with someone like this? 3 years? 4? I couldn't even remember the last time I'd had coffee with someone for reasons other than work. Part of me wanted to say no immediately, but another part, the part I'd been trying to ignore for weeks, was curious. Finally, I texted back, "Okay, tomorrow morning at 10. I know a little coffee shop around here." Noah replied, "Great, I look forward to it." I set my phone down and let out a long breath. I wasn't sure why I'd agreed, but once the message was sent, I knew there was no turning back. And that made my heart beat a little faster. The next morning, I stood in front of the mirror, studying myself for a long time. I was so used to seeing myself in my waitress uniform, my hair tied back, my face lightly made up just to hide the dark circles after a long, tiring night. But today, I wanted to feel different. Not for Noah, not for anyone else, but for myself. I wanted to feel like more than just a 42-year-old woman working the night shift at a small diner. I chose a light blue sweater, paired it with dark jeans, and slipped on a pair of simple leather boots. Nothing too flashy, but enough to make me feel like I was stepping into a different version of myself. When I walked into the small coffee shop on 7th Avenue, a place I'd been to a few times before, I saw Noah sitting there, waiting. He stood up when he saw me, his eyes lighting up slightly. "You look beautiful today," he said. I flinched at the compliment, not because it was too sudden, but because it had been so long since anyone had said something like that to me. "Thank you," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. We ordered drinks, a black coffee for Noah, a latte for me, and began to chat. At first, the conversation was like our text messages, light, comfortable, nothing too deep. But then, something shifted. Haven't you ever thought about leaving Brooklyn? Noah asked, stirring his coffee. I smiled faintly. You've lived here all your life. Brooklyn is your home. But home isn't always the best place to stay, is it? I paused, staring at Noah. He wasn't asking casually. He genuinely wanted to know. I'd never really thought about it, partly because of Liam, partly because of work, and maybe because I didn't know where to start. Noah nodded, as if he understood. I think everyone feels that way sometimes, but sometimes we need a change. I chuckled. You sound like you've been through a lot. Noah laughed too, but there was something in his eyes, something deeper, more complicated. I wanted to ask more, but then I stopped myself. This wasn't a date. It was just two people talking. I didn't need to dig deeper. But no matter how many times I reminded myself of that, I couldn't deny one thing. Noah made me feel something I hadn't felt in years. The way he listened, the way he looked at me, not with pity, but with genuine respect, made me feel seen. Not as a mother, not as a widow, but as a person. And that scared me. The meeting lasted much longer than I expected. When I glanced at my watch, it was already past noon. I stood up, ready to end things there, but as I put on my coat, Noah suddenly spoke. Do you want to go for a walk? I stopped, looking at him. A walk? I thought this meeting would end here. Just two acquaintances sharing a cup of coffee before going their separate ways. But now I was faced with a choice. I could say no, return to my small apartment and continue my life as it was. Or I could say yes, just this once, to see what might happen next. I let out a soft breath, then nodded. Okay, Noah, but just for a little while. He smiled. You won't regret it. I wasn't sure if I would, but as I walked out of the cafe with Noah, I knew one thing for certain. I had broken my own rule, and I didn't know if I could ever go back. That walk was supposed to be a spontaneous idea, a conversation that lasted a little longer before we each returned to our own lives. But I didn't expect it to mark an irreversible change in my relationship with Noah. We strolled along Prospect Park, where the trees were beginning to turn the golden yellow of a New York autumn. The dry leaves rustled underfoot, and the air was crisp and cool. I pulled up the collar of my coat, feeling the chill creep into my skin. Noah walked beside me, his strides long and unhurried, as if he had all the time in the world. He didn't say much, but the silence didn't feel awkward. Instead, it brought a strange sense of peace, a feeling I had long forgotten. Then, he suddenly spoke. Have you ever thought about falling in love again? The question stopped me in my tracks. I turned to look at Noah, my eyes narrowing in surprise. What do you mean? Noah shrugged as if it were no big deal. I'm just curious. I think you're a wonderful, strong person with so much to give, but you've always kept your distance from everything. I felt a lump form in my throat. You don't keep your distance because you don't need anyone. You do it because you're scared. His words froze me in place. I stared at Noah for what felt like an eternity. He wasn't being sarcastic or mocking. His eyes were filled with nothing but genuine concern. Yet, that very concern left me feeling uneasy. I'm not scared of anything, I replied, though my words sounded hollow even to me. Noah gave a small smile. You know, Eleanor, sometimes the strongest people are the ones most afraid of getting hurt. I didn't know how to respond. I just stood there on the empty park path, the breeze brushing against my skin, and realized he might be right. Maybe I was scared, afraid to open up again, afraid to let someone in only to lose them. But why did Noah have to be the one to see through me? After that walk, I thought things would return to normal. I'd go back to my routine, Noah would go back to his life, and it would all be just a fleeting moment. But I was wrong. Noah didn't disappear. He kept texting me every day, checking in after my late-night shifts. The worst part, or maybe the best part, was that I grew accustomed to it. I started looking forward to his messages, eagerly scanning my phone screen every time it buzzed, and I hated myself for it. I wasn't some confused 20-year-old girl. I was a grown woman who had endured trauma and learned to protect herself. So why did Noah have to unsettle me like this? One evening, as I was leaving the Bluebell Diner, I saw Noah leaning against his car. My heart skipped a beat. "Noah, why are you here?" He shrugged, his smile soft. "I thought you might need someone to take you home." "No, I don't. I can walk." "You can. But that doesn't mean you should." I looked at him, searching for a reason to say no, but eventually sighed and got into the car. We didn't talk much on the way home, but when the car stopped in front of my apartment, I didn't get out right away. I turned to Noah, studying him closely. "Why are you doing this, Noah? Why do you care about me like this?" He was silent for a moment, then spoke slowly. "Because I like you, Eleanor." It felt like all the air had been sucked out of my lungs. I stared at him, unsure if I'd heard correctly. Noah continued, his voice steady. "I don't care about the age gap. I don't care what the world thinks. I just know that every time I talk to you, I feel comfortable, like I can be myself, and I think you feel the same way." I didn't know how to respond. I couldn't deny what he said, but I couldn't accept it either. I clenched my hands in my lap, taking a deep breath. "Noah, I don't know if I can do this." He nodded, as if he'd expected that answer, but his gaze remained steady. "You don't have to decide right now. I just want you to know." I sighed, then gently opened the car door and stepped out. But as I closed the door, I heard Noah's voice through the window. "You can pretend you don't feel anything, Eleanor, but you can't fool yourself forever." I stood there for a long time, watching Noah's car disappear into the night, my heart pounding. I didn't know what to do with these feelings, but one thing was certain. I couldn't keep running away. I tried to ignore what Noah had said that night. I told myself it was just a young man's fleeting concern, that he'd forget soon enough, and I could go back to my life as it was. But I was wrong. After that night, everything changed. I started paying more attention to Noah's texts, rereading his messages several times before replying. When I saw him outside the Bluebell Diner, my heart would race. And when I walked into my empty apartment at night, I realized I'd grown used to his presence in my life. That realization terrified me. But Noah didn't back away. He didn't retreat. He stayed, his eyes sincere, his patience unshaken. Then, one Saturday night, he texted me, "Eleanor, would you like to have dinner with me?" I stared at the message for a long time, knowing that if I said yes, there would be no going back. But before I could overthink it, my fingers were typing a reply. "Okay, but nothing special." Noah responded immediately, "Nothing special, just two people having dinner together." But we both knew it wasn't just a casual meal. I arrived at the restaurant on time, a small, cozy diner in Williamsburg with warm yellow lights and soft jazz playing in the background. When I walked in, I saw Noah sitting there waiting for me. He stood up as I approached, his eyes sparkling. "You look great," he said. I wasn't sure if he meant it, but the compliment still warmed me. "You're not so bad yourself," I teased, trying to keep my tone light. We ordered, and the conversation flowed as it always did, about work, about the little things of the day. But I could sense something unspoken hanging between us, something we both felt but neither of us wanted to address. Then, in the middle of dinner, Noah suddenly put down his knife and fork and looked at me intently. "Eleanor, you're avoiding me." I paused, meeting his gaze. "I'm not." "Yes, you are," he interrupted, his voice calm but firm. "You know there's something between us, but you're trying to deny it." My heart raced. I knew he was right, but I didn't want to admit it. I set my glass down on the table and took a deep breath. "Noah, you're 16 years younger than me. You're Liam's friend. This can't happen." "Why not?" he asked immediately, his tone direct. I looked at him confused. Because it's not right. Because you shouldn't feel this way. Because I don't want you to get hurt." Noah stayed quiet for a long moment, then leaned forward, his voice soft but firm. "You can say all that, Eleanor, but there's one thing you can't say." I stared at him, my lips parting, but no words came out. Noah continued, You can't say you don't feel anything. I wanted to deny it. I wanted to tell him I didn't feel anything special, that this was all a mistake, but I couldn't. That would have been a lie, and I knew Noah could see right through me. The air between us grew heavy, and I felt like I was standing on the edge of something that, if I took one more step, I wouldn't be able to turn back from. Then Noah chuckled. You don't have to decide right now. I just want you to know that I'm not going anywhere. His words carried a certainty that made me feel both panicked and relieved. He wasn't pushing me for an answer. He just wanted me to know he wasn't going to disappear. And that scared me more than anything else because, for the first time in years, there was someone willing to wait for me. I didn't know how much longer I could keep up the walls I'd built around myself. That night, when Noah drove me home, I didn't tell him no. I didn't say he didn't have to. As I got out of the car, I turned back and said something I hadn't planned to. Thank you, Noah, for not giving up. He looked at me, his eyes shining with hope. You won't give up either, Eleanor. I didn't know what was coming next, but I did know I was losing control. The wall I'd built to protect myself was starting to crack. I didn't fully understand how much that night had changed me. All I knew was that when I got back to my small apartment, I couldn't sleep. I sat by the window watching the yellow lights cast shadows across the empty Brooklyn streets, and Noah's words echoed in my mind. You can't say you don't feel anything. I hated to admit it, but he was right. I felt something, more than I wanted to. I had been alone for so long, convincing myself I didn't need anyone, but Noah came and shattered that illusion. He didn't rush me. He didn't force me to give him an answer right away. Instead, he did something even scarier. He made me realize I couldn't keep running forever, and I didn't know how much longer I could keep up the act. After that dinner, I tried to keep things normal. I continued working at the Bluebell Diner, kept texting Noah, and pretended nothing had changed. But deep down, I knew something was different. When Noah texted, I responded faster. When I saw his name pop up on my phone, my heart raced a little. And when I met him outside the diner late at night, I didn't say, "You don't have to walk me home anymore." I just smiled and got into the car. Noah didn't say anything either. He just looked at me with that calm gaze, as if he knew I was changing, even if I wasn't ready to admit it yet. One late evening, as I finished my shift and walked out of the diner, I saw someone standing across the street. It wasn't Noah. It was Liam. I paused. Liam didn't usually come to the diner at this hour. He was busy with work, with his own life. But tonight he stood there, hands in his coat pockets, looking at me thoughtfully. I walked over, trying to keep my voice steady. Liam, what are you doing here so late? He looked at me for a moment, then smiled softly. You should be asking yourself that. I knew what he was implying. He had figured something out. Then Liam glanced across the street where Noah was waiting in the car. How many times has Noah driven you home? I tightened my grip on my purse, my heart pounding. Just a few times. Liam raised an eyebrow. A few times? Are you sure? I didn't know how to answer. I wasn't good at lying, especially not to my son. Liam sighed and shrugged. You know, I figured this out a while ago. I blinked, surprised. What? He stared at me. You and Noah. My heart skipped a beat. I opened my mouth to say something, but Liam held up his hand. You don't have to deny it. I'm not stupid. I've seen the way Noah looks at you. I've seen how you react when he's mentioned, and I know you're not the same anymore. I bit my lip. What do you think about this, Liam? He looked at me for a long moment, then chuckled. I think you've been alone long enough. I froze. I had expected Liam to be angry, to protest. I braced myself for blame or judgmental looks. But instead, my son stood there looking at me with an understanding and acceptance I hadn't anticipated. I don't know where this is going, he said, but I do know one thing. Noah really cares about you, Mum, and if you feel the same way, why hide it? I didn't know how to respond. I just stood there, feeling the ice in my heart slowly melt away. That night, when I got into Noah's car, I no longer felt hesitant. I no longer felt like I was doing something wrong. I no longer felt like I was doing something wrong. Instead, I felt a sense of relief. I turned to Noah and smiled. "Do you want some coffee?" Noah looked surprised. "Right now?" I nodded. "Right now." He studied me for a moment, then smiled. A genuine, warm smile. "Of course." And so, on a quiet Brooklyn night, Noah and I found ourselves in a 24-hour coffee shop. I knew I was stepping into a new chapter of my life. I didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in years, I felt ready for it. Who would have thought I'd find myself in a relationship like this? Me, a 42-year-old woman who had believed my life was set. My heart closed off after past losses. And Noah, a 26-year-old man, patient, calm, yet determined, someone who saw me in a way no one else ever had. I wrestled with myself, trying to find every excuse to avoid it. But eventually I realized the most important truth. Love doesn't follow rules. We can't control who we fall for. We can only choose whether we have the courage to embrace it. And for the first time in years, I decided to stop running. My relationship with Noah didn't stay a secret for long after that night when I asked him out for coffee without hesitation. I knew then that I had truly accepted it. We started spending more time together. At first, it was simple. Dinners after work, walks around Brooklyn, conversations that stretched into the early hours. But then, inevitably, Liam found out. He knew better than anyone. One night, as Noah picked me up for dinner, Liam was standing there when I opened the door. He watched us both for a long moment, his expression calm. There was no anger, no judgment, just a small smile. "So, you've finally stopped running away," he said, crossing his arms. I sighed, shaking my head. "You really don't think this is strange?" Liam shrugged. "Not really. I just think you're happier, and that's enough for me." I looked at my son, feeling a wave of emotion rise inside me. Liam had matured more than I realized, and maybe it was me who needed to grow a little more. Noah didn't say anything. He just stood there, calm and patient as always, and I knew I had made the right choice. We didn't try to explain our relationship to the world. Not everyone understood it, and not everyone supported it. But that didn't matter, because when I was with Noah, I felt like myself again. No longer just a widow, no longer just a single mother, no longer a woman living only out of duty. I was Eleanor, a woman who could still love and be loved. And that was enough. One evening, as we sat together on a bench in Prospect Park, Noah turned to me, his eyes still filled with that same patience. "Do you still regret it?" he asked. I looked at him for a long moment, feeling the cool night breeze and the warmth of his hand in mine. I knew my answer. I shook my head slightly, smiling. "No, not at all." Noah smiled too. We sat there in the middle of that quiet Brooklyn night, not saying anything more, because we both knew this story was just beginning.